The old phrase, you spend the first half of your life spending your health to get your wealth. And then the second half of your life, spending your wealth to try to get back your health. Maybe we just don't lose either of them. Maybe that would be a great way to go, right? Now, you could take my comments to an extreme and just only live for today and never have anything prepared for your future self. There's a great scene in a Simpsons episode where Marge comes up to Homer and she sees him drinking this concoction of mayonnaise and vodka. And she says, "What is that?" And he says, "Well, it's a little mayonnaise and vodka." And she's just floored. And she says, "What? That's so terrible for your health. I mean, what about future Homer?" And Homer says, "Future Homer. Sucks to be that guy." So you don't want that either.
Hey, it's Rocky. Welcome to Richer Soul. Today's guest is Mark Willis, and we chat about what's the purpose for your money. Imagine it's 12 months from now, and you've achieved your major life goals. How does it feel to be in the best shape of your life? To wake up energized, excited about the day? To have great relationships and friends who support you and propel you forward? How does it feel to have an excess of money, to be able to make the choices you want? To be fearless and open to trying new adventures? Imagine being connected to the universe and it providing everything you desire. It's possible over time, and your past does not dictate your future. The only thing holding you back from this vision is you. It's time to take control of our thoughts and use them to our advantage. Welcome to Richer Soul, where we achieve our dreams and create harmony to health, wealth, relationships, time, and spirituality. If you have not had a chance to listen to episodes 1 through 9, I encourage you to go back and listen to the framework behind Richer Soul and how to create the life of your dreams. You can also find all the show notes for this episode at richersoul.com. Today's quote comes from Naval Ravikant. Life is a single-player game. Do you play life as a single player? Or are you always trying to play multiplayer? That means you're comparing yourself to everyone else instead of the you of yesterday. The reality is most people are doing the latter. And that causes a lot of mental strain and unnecessary competition. Did you see? We just hit another milestone. 300 episodes. Wow, that's amazing for me. I know I've grown tremendously over these past 5.5 years and have had the opportunity to have some great discussions with many of our guests. Are there podcasts that are more popular than mine? Yes, but my competitor is the me of yesterday, and I'm improving. And I'm doing what I want. I'm not doing this to get more likes or get more people involved. And so I don't worry about what others are doing with their shows. I just want to keep improving this one. Speaking of which, since we're at 300 and we're celebrating a little, can you do me a favor? If there's a way I can improve this show, or if there's something that I could do better, just go ahead and email me and let me know. It's rocky@richersoul.com. Love to hear how you're doing and whether there's anything I can do to better serve you. Now, before we continue, let's get to last week's action step, was to imagine a gray zone between yes and no, and notice how much is happening in between. This is an interesting one. This is where we get caught in the drift. When we're not clear on our yes and our no and what we want, we see others having fun, and so they pull us off course. Or we get roped into things that we really didn't want to do because we weren't clear on our no. So be clear on the yes and the no and get out of the gray. Makes life a lot simpler. And again, it's focusing on you. Speaking about showing up and constantly improving, the same is true for money. It's an appropriate topic today as we go back to the basics, as we talk about money and purpose. and making sure that you're in alignment with that for you. We all need clarity on our money, purpose, and putting it all together in just the right order. And our guest, Mark Willis, who's a certified financial planner, is a man on a mission to help you think differently about your money, your economy, and your future. After graduating with 6 figures of student loan debt and discovering a way to turn his debt into real wealth as he watched everybody lose their retirement savings and home equity in 2008, he knew that he needed to find a more predictable way to meet his financial objectives and those of his clients. Mark is a 3-time best-selling author and the owner of Lake Grove Financial Services. He's the co-host of the Not Your Average Financial podcast, where he shares some of his strategies for investing in real estate, paying for college without going broke, and creating an income in retirement that you will not outlive. Mark works with people who want to grow their wealth in ways that are safe and predictable to become their own source of financing and create tax-free income in retirement. Let's meet Mark. Welcome to Richer Soul, Mark Willis. It's great to have you join us today.
Oh, thanks, Rocky. Glad to be on.
Excited to learn from you. We always like to start at the beginning. What was it like when you were growing up, and how much did your family and school teach you about money?
Well, my first memory of money was collecting it through allowance and lemonade stands and that sort of thing. It somehow grabbed enough coins and nickels and dollar bills to amass a tidy sum of $50 when I was about 5 or 6 years old. And I have this great, very vivid memory of my mom wanting me to learn about money in this world of banking specifically. So she takes me to the bank to open up a checking account. And I'm supposed to take my paper bag full of my life savings. And my job was to hand over all of my life savings to this complete and utter stranger with a suit and tie. And his name says banker on the on the label, right on his name tag. And I was absolutely mortified that this guy was just going to run out and take my money and run. And little did I know how safe my money was in the bank relative to the paper bag, as I come to find out as an adult. But that's sort of my growing up earliest memory. And then I continued with finding myself into further and further student loan debt. I went through undergrad and then got a seminary degree at a seminary and found myself in 6 figures of student loan debt. And I had never really planned on entering the ministry as a day job, let's say. I just really loved learning about faith. And funny enough, the advanced degree didn't teach me a thing about money. But the scriptures that I was studying had plenty to say about money. But there was no financial planning course. There was no budgeting course. There was no, here's how you make a profit in this world course. Not even how to deal with other church members when you're trying to balance a church budget course. And so I found that to be a little ironic, I guess, that I didn't have any sort of education or skill with regard to dealing with this thing called money. My journey continued, and I'll keep it very brief, but I wanted to learn about money. So I ended up getting a certified financial planner designation. To make a long story short, started a financial firm, found that money brought the deepest values out of somebody's soul, much more so than talking about even churchy stuff. And so I found that having the conversation about money really reveals the deepest and most profound parts of the human experience. Not because money is important, Rocky, it's really not. It's just numbers on a screen or dollars in your pocket. But what's so interesting about money is that it touches all the real important parts of your life. Your sense of purpose, your marriage, your children, your legacy, your mission in the world. And money, you really can't engage all of those really important parts of your life without this thing called money. So anyway, that sort of takes us to today. I work with folks, clients all across the country and the world, and we work one-on-one in an advisory role to think through strategies that help them engage their purpose through this thing called money.
Perfect fit for our show. So let's take a step back. You're sitting there with the $50 in the paper bag. Did you actually let go and give it to him, or did you go crying and screaming?
Well, good question. I did let it go and give it to him, but there was a lot of trepidation in the midst of it all. And there's a lot of trust in my mom. There's a lot of great history around this institution we call banks, which we can get into. But There's actually a really great book out there on this topic, Rocky. I know you're a reader. The book is called Debt, the First 5,000 Years by David Graeber. 5,000 years. So this to me says that banking is as fundamental to the human experience as friendship, marriage. The oldest institutions in the world go clear back to the caveman days, and banking was there among them all. So it tells me that while banks as we understand them today might look different in the future, banking is something that we have to figure out and have to somehow take control of. Otherwise, it's going to take control of us.
Very true. And we'll dig into some of these different things together. You went into seminary, right? Which is a perfectly acceptable thing. But you spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to learn. I mean, most people who come out of there don't make a ton of money.
That's right. Yeah. And we graduated in 2008, which was a great time to be looking for work, by the way. And no real awareness of money as we were going into all that debt. That's the tragedy of it all. Most of these 18-year-old kids, like I was, getting our undergrad and then graduate degrees, whether it's theological degree or an arts and crafts degree, things that don't necessarily pay you a six-figure salary, you end up having regret. I heard just yesterday somebody wrote it was a Business Insider article. She was complaining that the President Biden's recent proposal to forgive $10,000 of student loan debt was like a drop in the bucket. Her words were, "It's a drop in the bucket." She's a math teacher and she has over $300,000 of student loan debt. Now, how do you even do that, right? Like, what college would offer that kind of debt? And how do you accumulate $300,000? And what's so ironic is she's a math teacher.
She might have gotten a degree, but I don't think she gets math.
Right. Yeah. Well, nothing against her particularly, but it belies the tragedy of our situation that banks are in control. And more broadly, the runaway cost of college is in control. And and she was in her 50s when she was writing this article just yesterday. So this means she's probably had some kind of debt for a very long period of time.
You know why I struggle to believe that? Because I'm in my 50s. Now, when I went to college, it wasn't expensive. Like literally, I could work part-time and pay tuition. So I don't know what she did.
I don't know her story, and I don't even know if it's true, but somehow she got her article published. Guys, go look it up. It just came out the other day in a Business Insider article. Unfortunately, I've met similar people to her, people who are getting their Social Security checks garnished because they still owe money to their federal student loans.
And that is the one area where when you go in and you get your loans, that they don't tell you what the payment is. They don't give you a payment schedule. They don't tell you what the interest is going to be.
Yep.
And they call the loan an award. Here's your award package.
I've never noticed that, Rocky, but you are so right. You are so right. That is so interesting, isn't it? That they are awarding you this obligation of servitude.
Of servitude. Yeah.
And it can't be bankrupted.
No.
And they'll go as far as to garnish your wages into your working years and your Social Security if you retire with debt. Yeah, it's unbelievable the links we go. And yet that while an 18-year-old can get a student loan for $50,000 or whatever to get a underwater basket weaving degree, a similar 18-year-old can't get a business loan if he has a great business idea. Interesting, right? Interesting times we live in.
Do you have to be 21 for an SBA loan? I don't even know.
If all you have is an idea and you don't have any collateral, you don't have much to your name except an idea, like you've got a brand new laser you want to invent, or you've got a new way to build the mousetrap, and all you have is an idea and you're 18 years old, you'll get laughed out of the bank. But you walk into that same bank and ask for a student loan, they'll happily sign your name on the dotted line and give you as much money as you want to get your underwater basket weaving degree.
It is quite hilarious. So let's take this step back. It sounds like your parents were very intentional in wanting to teach you about money.
Yes, I'd say that there's a definite desire. There was definitely not a lot of, I think, ongoing education wasn't really there. We learned enough to, quote, balance the checkbook back when you had to even do that. And my mom did a great job as an accountant herself to help me think through some of the basics. She worked very hard to help me and my brother learn some of the details on this thing called money. But I wouldn't say that I was aware of it. We didn't talk about it much except to fight about it. How little there was around the house and how we couldn't, do this and couldn't pay for that and so forth. So we were very much working class, if that, working poor maybe. But we tried to keep up as best we could. And again, I remember my first dealings with this thing called money was in a kind of a dark, dirty hotel room, signing my life away to Sally Mae and all of her cronies. That was sort of the first real time. I mean, I had day jobs and so forth along the way, but the real awareness of what I was doing didn't even hit me until I was already graduated college. And I had stumbled across some Dave Ramsey CDs and tried to figure out, well, how am I going to pay for this massive chain around my neck known as a student loan?
And unfortunately, maybe that's why they don't teach about money in college. You might wake up and leave.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, good point. Yeah, that's unfortunately maybe too true.
It is. But and the other thing is it comes down to the parents as well. If you are in any of the college Facebook groups as a parent, you will see the conversations that happen. And it's just incredible, the lack of financial planning that goes on in the endless spending. You deal with a lot of clients. What are you seeing right now is some of the biggest topics that are coming up or the biggest concerns or struggles they have?
Right now on the headlines, we're hearing quite a bit about inflation. And I'm seeing that on the faces of many of the people I meet with. And the biggest concerns are not necessarily price inflation, although I did hear someone recently, just yesterday, say her landlord had raised her rent by 30% from last year to this year. And I think there's some interesting ties into the rent moratoriums. It's a higher risk now to be a landlord if the government can get between you and the private contract with your tenant and tell the tenant that he or she doesn't have to pay rent, but yet you have to continue to pay a mortgage. There's going to be a price premium on the rent. So there's some reasons maybe why we're seeing rent going up this high now. It's a higher risk to do long-term leases now. That's a piece of the puzzle that I see is inflation and the ongoing effects of that. But I hear also an undergirding, even beyond inflation, there's just this underlying sense of listlessness or purposelessness with regards to money. I mean, has anybody ever said to you, Rocky, or to me, or to most of our clients, I think not, what is your purpose for all this money? What is it? What is your financial statement of purpose that clarifies what this money is supposed to be doing for you? When I look at my tools in the toolbox, like a hammer, I don't need necessarily like a long existential thought process about what my hammer is for. I know it's there for one thing, getting rid of, besides hitting my thumb, it's supposed to be there to nail in a nail. But something as integrated as money is into our overall life, I think a lot of people find anxiety if they don't have a purpose, a thoughtful, clarified point to what this money thing is. I mean, if they're going to spend so much time chasing it, 8 hours a day, right, for 40 plus years of your life, and even on your free time, you're spending this money that you've spent so much time earning, and you're building up this big pile in toward your retirement and maybe to give it to future generations, then why not take just a few moments and start thinking about what is the purpose of this thing we call money? It might just save you a lot of heartache. It might save it might save your life. It might save your important relationships, and it might keep you from becoming just a huge jerk if you have thought through your reason for money. What is its purpose for you? So that's one of the big key elements, and that goes beyond the headlines. But for folks that are interested, I would suggest, take a journal entry day and figure out what is money, what is it for? What's your financial statement of purpose?
And I think there are a lot of emotions tied around with that. And part of it is a lot of people are on a track. So we're told to save for retirement. The goalposts keep moving. How much is enough, right? That is a constant question. And then even knowing the math to figure out how much is enough. In other words, even if you know how much you want, then understanding the math to figure out how much you need. But more importantly, what you do with your money for the 40 years. I think too often we've been told, invest in a 401k or a tax-deferred account. But I don't think people even understand what that means. I put money in a 401k, which is great, and I don't pay taxes today. But when I withdraw the money, all the gains are no longer taxed as capital gains. They're taxed as income, so at a much higher rate. And if you're successful in retirement, you may actually have more money than when you work. So these are all the things you have to think through. But if you lock all your money up in a 401k, it makes it really hard if you want to get involved in real estate, or if you want to start a business, or you want to do something else, because your funds are tied up unless you've got the flexibility to move them around. And so that comes back to your question. What is the purpose of this money? What am I going to use it for? And what are the different buckets that I need to fill up so that as life takes its twists and turns, and clearly COVID has caused a lot of people to rethink life. So it's nice to have different buckets that give you the flexibility to make those choices. I know a lot of people were thankful they got to pull money out of a 401k during COVID, but that came with a hefty tax bill. And I don't know how many of those people realized that that was going to be the tax bill they were going to get.
You're exactly right. And to your point, having a sit-down discussion with your important relationships in your life, your spouse, your kids, yourself at least, and ask yourself, well, what do I want my money doing for me? If you don't ask yourself that question, you'll spend your life letting money tell you what it wants you to do for it. So there's a story about this, and it's kind of a famous story. So for those that have already heard it, I'll kind of go fast here. But, there was this very rich businessman, and he decides to take a vacation down to the South Pacific, beautiful island there. And he's worked all his life. He's worked very hard. He's saved up a ton of money. He's going to go enjoy the fruits of his labor. So he's very excited. He gets out and he decides to go fishing. And out on the dock, there's this local who is also fishing. And he's coming away. He's leaving the fishing spot as the businessman is approaching. And he comes to find out that this local has only been fishing for 3 or 4 hours for the day. And he's got plenty of fish in his bucket. And he says, oh, well, don't worry, Mr. Businessman. There's still plenty of fish out there. And the businessman asks, well, why didn't you keep fishing? I mean, it's still beautiful. We're only halfway through the day. The fisherman politely explains, right, that he's basically caught all he needs. He's going to go home and he's going to spend the rest of his day playing with his family, talking with his friends, maybe drinking a little wine and relax on the beach. So the businessman has seen now how great a fisherman this local is. And he starts to describe and educate this local on how, hey, if you stay out all day long, you can catch even more fish. You can use the profits to hire some people, buy bigger boats, catch even more fish. You can keep reinvesting your profits and buy even more boats, hire more fishermen. And if you work really hard in 20 or 30 years, you'll be a very rich man indeed. And so the businessman is super proud of all this great advice he's just bestowed on this local. And this little simple fellow looks at him sort of funny and says, well, what do I do then? After I've built up all this money, what do I do now that I've become so rich? And the businessman says, well, hey, once you're so rich and you can do anything you want, you probably could spend a little time with your family, talk with your friends, maybe drink a little wine, or just relax on the beach. And the reason why I share this story is it's so ironic that we spend so much of our life working so hard just to do what we might be able to do throughout our life. Why is there even a chapter of life called retirement? I mean, you've got some great Tim Ferriss books behind you there, Rocky. One of his books talks about setting aside little mini retirements throughout your lifetime. You can have a one chunk of life when you're already too old to enjoy it. Or you can have 6 months a year or 3 months a year or 2 weeks every 6 weeks where you go off and experience life before your knees are unable to climb those stairs in Italy, right? Up the castles of Italy or Germany. So enjoying those things now, there's not just a return on investment, I guess is what I'm saying. We should also be searching for a return on experience. And there are only some things I can do. I can't surf. When I'm 81 years old, I may not be able to surf the Australian shores. So I better go do that now before I'm too old to enjoy it. And this is, I think, what too many people are maybe rushing past as they jump into that 401k, which locks their money up until it's maybe too late for them to enjoy it.
And that's very true. It sounds like you've been listening to the podcast because these are the stories and themes that we talk about, is you've got to figure out that balance between life, and you do have to take the time off and enjoy it. And Otherwise, it becomes too late. And in that chase, the other thing that happens is you lose your health. And then it becomes really bad.
Yeah, well, there's the old phrase, you spend the first half of your life spending your health to get your wealth. And then the second half of your life, spending your wealth to try to get back your health. Maybe we just don't lose either of them. Maybe that would be a great way to go, right? Now, you could take my comments to an extreme and just only live for today and never have anything prepared for your future self. There's a great scene in a Simpsons episode where Marge comes up to Homer and she sees him drinking this concoction of mayonnaise and vodka. And she says, "What is that?" And he says, "Well, it's a little mayonnaise and vodka." And she's just floored. And she says, "What? That's so terrible for your health. I mean, what about future Homer?" And Homer says, "Future Homer, sucks to be that guy." So you don't want that either. You got to think long range. So you got to find this nice balance, and you want to find strategies and financial products and tools that don't trap your money, but also don't make it so that you spend it all before you need it.
And I think that's the biggest thing that drives me up the wall. People come, I see them on the forums and in different places asking for financial advice, but they're talking about tools and nobody knows what their goals are.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're not focused on, hey, this is my goal. What's the right tool for it? They're all focused on, oh, this sounds like a great tool, so I'm going to buy this tool, without thinking through the whole purpose of, is that the right tool for you?
If you gave me the choice, if you were a genie and you could grant me one wish, but your wishes were constrained to two choices. One, I could have Tiger Woods golf clubs, or two, I could have Tiger Woods golf swing. Most people on those forums are chasing those golf clubs. But if you just get the clubs, how good will you be at playing golf? I'll be just as terrible as I am today, right? But if you get the golf swing, if you understand the purpose, you understand the strategy, and you can always find, any golf club will get you down the fairway if you have the right swing. So you're exactly right. Couldn't agree more with you, Rocky. And it comes down to, I guess, one of our relatively common conversations I have with clients when they have this question. Well, Mark, should I do a Roth 401k or should I do a traditional 401k? I'll say, well, let's stop and let's zoom way out for a minute and just ask, well, what do you want your money doing for you? And I'll literally have them grab a notepad. And I'd recommend anybody listening to do the same. Take 5-10 minutes and just start writing down attributes, characteristics. Do not write down labels. Labels would be things like savings account, 401k, real estate investing. Avoid the crypto, avoid all of that for 10 minutes and just start writing down characteristics, personality traits of money. Here's just a few examples. And Rocky, feel free to pile on here. Give me any ideas you have. Do you want your money to be accessible? Do you want your money to be accessible without penalty? Do you want it to be taxed today? Or would you prefer to be taxed in the future? Would you like your money to ever run out? Or do you want that to be a permanent stream of income? Do you want that money to be exposed to creditors if you ever were to be sued or went through a lawsuit or went through a bankruptcy? Would you want that money to be on the balance sheet for banks if you ever need access to capital for collateral? Would you like there to be a competitive rate of return? Would you like there to be, the list could go on and on. Rocky, what would you add to this?
I'm trying to think through. You've gone through so many. The other question is, when do I need it?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Timing issues. What popped in my head was passive income, which I think is it's a hilarity because you have to put a lot of work in to get passive income and you still have to maintain it. So I think that's a question of how much of your time is devoted to it. And you mentioned crypto, and the one thing that I hear from the crypto people is always, well, you really have to study this and learn it. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. If I'm spending 500 hours learning a new asset class, maybe I should go spend $500 doing something else. Is that really where I want to spend my time and efforts? I'm a real estate investor. I know what it is to be a landlord. It's, it's work. Everyone thinks they all look at the results. They don't look at the effort that goes into it. And I think that's a big part. How much effort, time, and anxiety do you want to be part of this journey too?
I agree. Yeah, there's going to come a day where income will stop, but expenses never stop. And by income, I mean earned income specifically. There will come a day for all of us when income will stop. So the question is, what are you going to do to replace that income? Now, I'm a little contrarian because I don't think anything in life worth doing should ever be 100% passive. I mean, I think about my health. It's not passive. I think about my marriage. It's not passive. I think about my business. It's not passive. Anything that's really worth much is not 100% passive. In fact, there's a law of the universe called entropy. And I think it's applied to our financial life too. It's a very existential reality that we're all being ripped apart by the universe. And I don't want to give the universe any ammunition to tear me apart. So I always want to fight against entropy as best I can. I mean, the very fact that you and I are even sitting up and talking and having this discussion, not getting blown away by the universe, is us fighting against this thing called entropy. And that's true with our financial life too. Left up to its own devices, your money will just blow up. Everybody else has a plan for your money. Everybody else has a plan for your money. Do you have a plan for your money? Or is somebody else going to take it, right? Nobody should care more about your money than you do. Not me as a financial planner, not Rocky, not anybody else, not, the Nordstroms, right? Or anybody, or Starbucks. Nobody else should care more about your money than you do, or they're going to take it. That's entropy right there. So passive income is huge, realizing, of course, that it takes a lot of effort to get to passive. And there are some financial tools and strategies. If you've decided that that's going to be part of your financial purpose, to have streams of uninterrupted passive income, there are particular financial products and strategies. We use the income maximization strategy as for one to help people think strategically about that passive income stream. And using that tool and those strategies can help you in those days when your earned income will stop.
A lot to learn about money, and it's one of the topics that is not taught. Today's episode is sponsored by Profit Answer Man Podcast. Did you know that most small business owners hate looking at their financials? It's one reason they may struggle with business success. The Profit Answer Man podcast helps them ensure they are profitable and can pay their employees and weather the storms we all have to face. It's built on the Profit First methodology of pay yourself first. The Profit Answer Man podcast is a must listen to for every small business owner and anyone who wants to help them survive and thrive. Check it out on your favorite listening platform. We were chatting before the show. Let's do bookends here. Let's start with kind of the beginning of life, which is college, and then we'll kind of talk about the retirement side. Any advice on college planning and how to think about college up front? Because you're 18 years old and you're about to spend a couple $100,000. Yikes is all I can say there. Right. Yeah, that's a $1.7 trillion problem right now for our country. So it's obviously a inflating problem, and being creative about it. I've got a daughter. She's young. She's 6 years old. Do I want her to go to college? It's hard for me to say right now. It's still a little far out for me to really know. I'm preparing for that, but I'm not locking my money into products that force her to go to college. Case in point, 529 plans, ESA accounts, all of those force somebody to get educated by a university or something like a university. Well, what if my daughter wants to be, an entrepreneur or a real estate investor? Then having all that money locked away in a 529 or something like it, UTMA or UGMA, those are going to be products that are going to essentially force me to pay a penalty and taxes if I get that money out early. So thinking critically about where can I put this money where she can use it for anything she needs. Maybe she wants a wedding fund. Maybe she wants a new car or house, or like I say, a business capital or whatever. And so we use tools that don't paint us into a corner. And I try to do the same for my clients as well. And when it comes to college, you really want to think carefully because the average stay in a college right now is 5.5 years. That's the average, which blows me away to think that. 5.5 years. This means some people are spending less time. Like I got out in under 4 years. And it probably means for my undergrad, I should be clear there. But some people are going longer than 5.5. If that's the average,
So what does that mean? It means we went to college without a real plan to get in and get out. We went in to basically just have a social life for a few years and then maybe kind of figure out a major at some point and then kind of scrape together our classes and hopefully finally get out of there in 6 or 7 years. This is not a good way to spend the best early adult years of your life, especially at such high prices. Just met a lady who, she's a client of mine, so met her for a couple of years ago, but I was just talking to her a few months ago, and she was saying that her son has been accepted to a college that's going to cost about 80 grand a year. 80 grand a year. Yeah, I saw the shivers go down your spine there, Rocky. So can we find a way to, one, reduce that cost? And yes, it's true. You can negotiate between colleges. Sometimes the sticker price is not the same thing that everyone else pays. It's just like airline tickets. You know, we all get on the airplane, but we all pay different prices and we're all still going to the same destination. So there are ways you can negotiate with different colleges. We work with clients to help you minimize and mitigate that cost through SAT prep and college counseling and appeal letters that we send to the colleges. We negotiate to help reduce the price. We get the colleges fighting for your business because that's what they should be doing, like any other product. And then finally, on the back end, for what you still must pay, your final college, you might say sticker, not your sticker price, but the final net cost of college, we find ways to not only pay for it without going broke, but also to build wealth on that college cost so your retirement doesn't suffer in the process.
I remember when we went to those $80,000 college, I told my kid, you're not, unless they cut you a deal, there's no reason to go here. And essentially he will graduate spending less than that total for one year. It'll cost him less than that. And he's picking a career that will pay him well, that he enjoys. And it's a good investment. But those were the conversations that we had, that these were the things that we thought through. And then it's like, hey, you're here to get a piece of paper. Let's crank through this. Let's make the most. What are the things that you need to do along the way? And it's worked out well for him. It's worked out well for my daughter. But we were intentional through the whole process. And so we've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they don't have to deal with all of this silliness, so to speak.
You're helping your grandchildren as a result, too, because if your kids aren't, 10 miles before the start line, then that means if they have kids someday, that means your grandkids will be at a much better spot. So way to go. Being intentional matters for generations. It really does.
It does. The other thing is my son's going to graduate at 20 and he's going to come out and probably get a 6-figure job. So think about how much longer either you walk away earlier or you have that much more time to compound.
That's right.
With a high starting number. So it's a multiple win as far as I'm concerned.
I really think there's so many things now with YouTube University, basically, and so much like the podcast that you put out, Rocky, and so many more people who are putting out just incredible content. Your child can be more ready for their future if you apply them to learning than we as college age kids, Rocky, back in our day, than we ever could have been. So college as an institution will probably always exist, but it's going to be a dramatically different picture. When I left my college alma mater, they were installing a lazy river and a rock wall. Why do we need that? Okay. Why do we need that? I would prefer maybe to find some better ways to put that money to work or lower the cost of college.
Well, because for $80,000 a year, we need to have a nice experience.
That's true. That's true. That's right. Yeah.
And honestly, I think rather than forgive college debt, I think students should have the right to go back to their college and say, your degree did not provide the value you told me it would. So you pay the debt off, not me.
Yeah. You owe us some money.
You owe us some money. Send it to the government because it's not fair that we're stuck with it.
Isn't it interesting? And maybe there's all sorts of creative arrangements. Maybe the college decides, hey, we'll give you education for free, but you give us 20% of your salary for the next 6 years. Something like that.
And there are schools that are doing that. There are schools that are also changing the whole concept of what it means to learn, because most of what we're learning now in a college, by the time you graduate, it's outdated. So it really doesn't matter. from that standpoint. So changing the whole paradigm of what it's all about.
Absolutely.
We'll see what happens. So let's go to the other end of the spectrum. You mentioned a book you recently read, and you have a lot of thoughts on that, Die with Zero. Love to hear your insights.
Yeah, as a certified financial planner, it sort of flies in the face of basically everything. When I read that book, it's written by Bill Perkins. And just to give folks some context, he was a legendary energy trader. But in the book, he details this really thought-provoking framework for maximizing net fulfillment over net worth. So he kind of got into this through the traditional Wall Street world, but somewhere in the midst of it all, he realized he was chasing something and had no financial purpose. Back to our earlier comments. I mean, this is the same thing that we experience. If your house, God forbid, if it ever caught on fire, what would you grab? Would you grab your, really nice Ming vase, or would you grab the photo albums? Probably the photo albums, right? For most of us, even though maybe they are just pieces of paper on film, but you'd grab your memories. And this is what he describes. He talks about something called a memory dividend. Your life experiences that you've had in your lifetime, the really meaningful ones, come with it a memory dividend. These may or may not be big financial memories. Like one of my best memory dividends was laying on an open field with my high school friends, laying out with some frozen custard in our hands, talking about the universe, talking about our future, talking about what life was going to be like for us. That's a memory I've had since high school. Cost us a couple bucks for the custard, but what an incredible memory dividend to have that feeling of camaraderie, existential awareness, just a rush of friendly relationships all around me. So these are the sorts of things that if you plan your financial life for this thing called retirement, and you live your entire life in a cubicle or worse, a job that you hate, and then you get to this thing called retirement and you die 3 or 4 weeks after you retire, and you thoughtlessly leave it all to your family, while they'll be happy, what was the point? Even if you live a nice long retirement, if you still die with a couple $100,000 or $1 million or a couple $1 million in your account, you can actually think through how many years you wasted just sitting in the office when you could have been out enjoying your life. And so Bill, in his book, he sort of talks about this, and he says, hey, money is really just a form of life energy. It's just a form of life energy. And you trade some of your life energy for this green stuff or numbers on your bank account. And so if you build up this reserve of life energy and you don't spend it or give it away charitably to causes you care about, then essentially you could literally calculate how many days, months, and years you were wasting your life to just sitting in that cubicle, the proverbial cubicle, not enjoying yourself. So either you're going to spend the money and give it to the charities you care about, you're going to spend it on the country club, you're going to buy the sports car, you're going to enjoy the vacation, the cruise ship around the world, or you're going to die and you're going to leave it to your kids. And what are they going to do with it? They're going to use it to buy the country club membership, the car, the cruise ship around the world, and so forth. So I'd rather you enjoy it or leave it to the causes that you care about. And so this is what he describes when he says die with zero. Now, there are financial tools that help you maximize your income so that even if you ran out of money in that project, which is the risk that most people tell me, they're like, Mark, well, what if I run out? And it's true. We're in a huge retirement crisis right now. The average 401k for a 50-year-old is not even $100,000. Not even $100,000, according to the U.S. Commerce Bureau.
It's not a question of what if I run out? It's a question of you will run out.
That's right. Yeah. So we must find a way to create a situation where folks never outlive their income. And too many people have defined contribution plans, which are financial tools that we're defining the contributions we put in there, $300 a month into the 401k or whatever. But it's a big old fat question mark. What is your defined benefit? We used to have the pension. We used to have the annuity. We used to have the real estate. But too often, all we have now is a big fat question mark. And this means we have a very inefficient retirement. And we'll either run out before we die, or we'll die with so much that we end up blowing it. We ended up wasting a great deal of our life just sitting in that cubicle when we should have been out enjoying the beach. That's the die with zero paradigm. It's almost scary to even say it as a certified financial planner, Rocky, because my entire the typical retirement planning advisor, and I use those words very carefully, he or she gets paid for assets under management, AUM. So I want you to literally see like a big old pile of money, okay? And the more that pile grows, the more he or she gets paid for your retirement planner or your investment advisor. And you climb that mountain, you're going up, up, up this mountain, and you're feeling good. You got your $1 million 401k or your $5 million, 401k, and you get to the top of the mountain. And what's the job, right? The job is to plant the flag at the highest possible point you can. That's sort of the ultimate win. But that's actually not the goal. Rocky, have you ever gone mountain climbing or hiking?
I've gone hiking. I don't see the reason to climb a mountain.
I hear you. Yeah. Yeah. When I climbed Mount Fuji with my wife, it was sort of when we were dating at the time and we were still really trying to impress each other. She still impresses me, but I was trying to impress her, trying to climb this mountain. Going up was difficult. It was dangerous. It was scary. It was cool. But honestly, Rocky, coming back down the mountain, I really thought I was going to die about a half a dozen times. Like, on this mountain, this is where it ends. I'm done here. I thought it was over. And turns out I'm not alone. 85% of deaths are coming down Mount Everest, not going up Mount Everest. So the goal of our financial life is not to plant the flag at the top of some mountain somewhere. It's to get back down the mountain safely and hand off the flag to the next generation. Okay, so how do we get down the mountain? I think there's very few financial tools and strategies in this world, in our financial universe, that really help us back down the mountain without tumbling down. If the markets crash and you're taking money out for groceries and grandkids, you are in serious trouble. Serious trouble. So what are some tools, strategies, thought processes that we can use to help maximize our income coming down the mountain?
And that makes a lot of sense. And even in retirement, one of the things that happens is you get into a scarcity mindset because you're always afraid of running out. And so it becomes very hard to spend down your money because you spent your whole life saving it to create the mountain, that now to say, okay, now we're going to take the mountain down, is not an easy switch for people. Again, money and emotions constantly go back and forth together. And it's just another example of it.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, you need a permission slip to spend. And I think we found some particular tools that help clients do this in a way that helps them have that permission slip without fear of running out. But you really need to know going into it, hey, what do I want this money to do for me? I'm going to keep going back to that question, Rocky, because it's so crucial. But if you've got a permission slip to spend, you can spend it and enjoy it and not be all stressed out about it. It gives people a sense that, yeah, I can live as long as I need to. I can live the very best life possible. I'll never run out of income, even if I run out of money. These are strategies that have been around for thousands of years. People need to know about them, but it's too often not brought up by typical stock jockeys, investment gurus. You need to think outside the box of the Wall Street casino and think about things that give you a permanent stream of income that you'll never outlive.
That makes a lot of sense. You have your own podcast, not your average financial podcast. What are some of the lessons that you've learned there or shared there with regards to money?
Well, there's 250 episodes, so I'm sorry, I'm only going to be able to give you one or two. Maybe it's either totally a doofus for having that many episodes or we're onto something. But generally speaking, I'd say typical financial planning is no longer working. We've given this 401k experiment a good go. It's now 41 years old. Okay. So this means the 401k is so young, it's not even old enough to retire itself yet. So what are some things that we can do that help give people financial control, efficiency, safety, leverage in a way that gives them the kind of peace of mind that doesn't mean they're going to have to go like analytically watching that nest egg, hoping it doesn't crack on them. And so some of the things we've learned are just, hey, yeah, where you put your money matters. Where you put your money makes it do different things. So we explore different strategies that help people accomplish what they're doing without taking a bunch of unnecessary risk.
And that's, I think, one of the big things. A lot of times people do take unnecessary risks. And even more often than that, I think a lot of times people don't even understand the risks. Because everyone wants to look at the positives. Nobody wants to look at the negatives. And no one's going to tell the stories generally of, yeah, I invested that and I lost all my money. That's not usually dinner conversation. That's
right. Yeah. You'd rather be the guy, the superhero who's, found the meme stock that took off and went to 1,000. And yeah, no one wants to be the loser who picked the wrong, crypto coin and went to zero for sure.
Or bought the meme stock at the top and then watched it come all the way back down.
Well, that's true. Yeah, boy. And it's, let me let some of the pressure off, guys, the real investor returns are much lower than what you're being advertised. The stock market averages 10% with dividends over the last 100 years. And that's supposed to be what we're all shooting for, like that you can just fall off a log and get 10% a year. Okay, so this is research done by third parties. Okay, so there's no dog in the fight here. But the real return of actual investors over the last 30 years, if you were in a blend of stocks and bonds like most index funds are, ETFs, et cetera, the real return after 30 years, you ready for this? 2.6%. 2.6% over 30 years. That includes some down years like the 2008 crash. That's quite a few up years, bull market runs like we're in right now for the most part, this year notwithstanding. Can you even accept that? Like having the amount of risk and wildness and volatility we've had over these last 30 years, Rocky, to get that kind of a pathetic return. This is according to Dalbar, their quantitative analysis of investor behavior study. They put it out every year. It's public information. Look that up. But that's now, if you're all in on the stock market and have no bonds, it's closer to 3.6%, which is still unbelievably low given the risk we've all gone through. So, let yourself off the hook. If you've picked a few meme stocks, realize that it happens to all of us. I was just talking to my brother about our little play fund that we have and how it's been performing so poorly. No one's got a crystal ball. No one's supposed to have all this stuff figured out. And at least some of your portfolio should be in things that don't depend on things that you cannot control. I believe in risk. Believe me, Rocky, you and I are both business owners. You know what it's like to take a risk, right? It's just the unnecessary risk that I think too many of us are taking. I drive my car. I try to not take unnecessary risk if I've got my family in the back. Most of the time when I'm driving solo, I'll try not to take too many unnecessary risks, but I like to have a little fun. But it's the unnecessary risk that I think we're taking with our money that ends up causing us so much pain.
And that's so true. And you need to understand what those risks are. And then either you can mitigate them or have a system to be able to work through it. I think too often we're supposed to buy low and sell high, but human nature, we buy high and we sell low. And that is unfortunately what that study shows, is that's just the way we behave. Mm-hmm. So speaking about having a purpose for your money and business owners, you use the Profit First system, which pretty much does that. It gives your money a purpose within there. How's that worked out for you?
I have enjoyed the experience of having a better sense of awareness of my finances. I know, Rocky, you're an expert in this area. And for those that haven't yet, need to go check you out and reach out to you. So it's a tool that helps you like the book talks about. It gives you clear, defined portion sizes on your plates. I love every month checking in with my team. I've got a team of people who do all the heavy lifting on our numbers. But like I said, nobody cares about your money more than you do. So you still, even if you're outsourcing your bookkeeping or whatever, you still need to be paying attention to your money. There's never going to be a day where you can totally hand off this thing called money to somebody else. Unless you want to end up on the wrong end of a jail cell someday. And that's not what I want for anybody's future. So always give yourself that connection to your money. I have a little timer on my calendar to spend that time every month looking over my stuff and going over it with my wife too, and our business partners and those that involve themselves in our bookkeeping. I'll do the target allocation percentages every month. And it's just been a tremendous relief to us to know, okay, here comes some headwinds, or all right, we're moving in the right direction and making those 1% adjustments.
And it gives you a visceral feeling of your money, and it makes it real because you're seeing it and you're essentially touching it every month. And the one thing that seems to be coming up more and more, just like you talked about with rent, is all of these subscription services. You know, what you used to be able to buy in software, today you rent in software. And before you know it, you're dependent on these different things, and then they double the price, and then they double the price again. And pretty soon, everyone else is making a lot of money except you. Mm-hmm. The other thing is half of the time you stop using it, and yet you're still paying because nobody bothered to call them up and cancel.
I literally just today called up stamps.com. I don't know if I should use their name or not. If you want to edit that out, that's fine. But I called up a mailing provider, and I sat on the phone with them for 25 minutes just trying to convince them to stink and cancel my service because we weren't using them. And yet there they are on my bill every month. And it was only because we were checking that bill, our bank statement every month, that we even saw that.
And that's a big part of what you have to do. Whether it's your home budget, business budget, every month, I review every single transaction that we have every single month. I use software to do it, and it brings it up. I don't automate it because I do semi-automate it, but even though it's automated, I still have to review and accept so that I'm like, okay, we spent on this. What was that? I forget. Oh yeah, that's where I spent all that money. And you don't remember.
Especially with inflation right now too. Just the prices are going up with inflation and so forth. And yeah, you got to keep an eye on this because either it's gonna gobble you up.
And I think that's part of it, though, with inflation is then you decide again, is that still worth it? You know, maybe it was worth it at this price, but at this price, it is no longer worth it. And so making those kinds of decisions. And honestly, with the price of gas, we looked at some of those things. My son went out to California for the summer. It's like, okay, how much is it going to cost you to drive the car out there? Oh, well, maybe the plane ticket, even though the plane ticket is double, might be a smarter choice, because once you start throwing wear and tear and everything else on, if you're not doing those comparisons and asking what's the value of doing it and how does it affect your life and is it worth it, your money is just leaking away, unfortunately.
Well, it goes back to financial statements of purpose, and you can call it something real official like that, or you can just say something that relates to why am I doing what I'm doing? Is my transaction with Netflix serving my financial statement of purpose with money? So write it out. You know, I think you can always change it later. My current working purpose for my own money is to have abundance of time, energy, and attention for my family, mainly outside, serving community. Abundance and time, energy, and attention for my family, mainly outside, serving community. Use that if you want to as a starting point, change it if you want to, but make it about you and decide, is my Netflix subscription serving that purpose of abundance of time, energy, and attention, et cetera, et cetera. So if it's not, are you brave enough to cancel? That's the question.
We don't have TV at home. Brave enough to cancel a long time ago.
Right on, man. Good work. That's why there's so many books behind you instead of a blank wall.
Instead of a blank wall with a TV on it. So this kind of, maybe you've already answered this question, but it's based on our conversation. What's an action step people can take to move forward this week?
If you got a Post-it note or a legal pad or, a little notes app on your phone, I love that little exercise. It helped me, help my wife figure out whether we wanted that 401k or not. Sit down and ask yourself, what do I want my money doing for me? Write that at the top of the page, and don't write down products. Don't write down strategies even. Just write down characteristics. What are the activities, attributes? If you were Pope of money for the day, what would you want your money doing for you? And, go back and listen to that little laundry list that I gave and Rocky gave earlier on in the episode. Do that for 15 minutes. Tell your money what to do for you. So it's not spending your life spending time where the money is telling you what it wants you to do for it. Instead, let your money act according to what you want rather than the other way around. That would be my one little action step. And that's totally free if you have the time to do it.
If you don't have the time to do it, then you should make the time, because that means you've got a problem.
That's right. Well, yeah, it sure does. Yeah. Again, everyone else has already got a plan for your money, and they're going to boss you around until you figure out how you can be boss of your money instead.
So true. It's time to learn the secrets of life. What's your secret to living an abundant life?
Well, we talked about abundance in the three categories that I think really make all the difference, which is time, energy, and attention. And if you've got time, energy, and attention, you can really help an abundant life flourish. But I really don't believe in this thing called balance. People talk about a balanced life. Balance is really just overcorrecting your last mistake. Think about that for a minute. It's just overcorrecting your last mistake, which is fine. I think we all have to. Tell my wife that I'm perfect. Yeah, right. I'm overcorrecting my last mistake with her all the time. But I want to chase abundance, not balance. There's this idea of balance, but I think I'll be balanced completely when I'm dead. That's what it means to be totally dead, is to be at total equilibrium with the environment is dead. And that's what balance is. So I want abundance. And that's where I get it, is in my time, my energy, and my attention. What software can I use? What mental frameworks can I have? What books can I read? How can I engage this thing called money for time, energy, and attention? All of my financial life wraps around those three concepts. And
I don't think we don't measure time well, right? We surely don't measure our attention, because it all seems to get distracted to the screen. And we don't really focus on, what's the energy involved in doing this. Too often we're focused on the wrong measurement sticks.
There's a great book out there, The Power of Full Engagement. You might like it, The Power of Full Engagement. It talks about energy management, not time management. When are you most creative in the day? Well, spend your time from 9 to 11 a.m. writing your next blog post or whatever, that sort of thing.
And I do a lot of that. I know when my times are and when I can do certain things and when I shouldn't do certain things.
Love it.
What did you learn later in life that you wish you would have learned sooner?
I think just knowing something called the repair attempt in your relationships. If you're escalating with your spouse and it's like it's getting boiling, it's okay to pull the ripcord and just say, I need a repair attempt. And just, that means like tell a joke or, hey, I need an hour. I'll come back an hour later. And it's not, you're not leaving the argument to like reload. You're leaving the argument to get yourself kind of emotionally back on track. So that's one thing I would say is, and this is by David Gottman, Dr. Gottman, who I think his name is David. Dr. Gottman, he comes up with this thing called the repair attempt, which gives couples the chance to regroup, think about it, get back in an emotionally online state and try again. So it has nothing to do with money, or maybe it does.
We call that the do-over.
There you go.
I need a do-over. You can do a do-over a couple days later. Say, hey, I did this and I didn't do it right, so let's have a do-over.
That's great. I love the do-over idea. Yeah, we used to have money budget conversations before Profit First, Rocky. Long time ago, way before. Right when we were getting married, we would have money conversations in public places because we knew there might need to be witnesses in case things went bad.
At least you were having the conversations.
That's right.
People weren't.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to give an 18-year-old one specific piece of wisdom, what would it be?
Don't ever feel like you're at the moment where you've arrived. Continue to grow. Watch out for the most insidious virus is the arrival virus, where you think you've made it and you know all there is to know. So keep learning, keep growing, keep listening to Rocky's podcast. That's what I would say.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a constant growth, and it's tough at a young age to realize that. We think we
isn't
know
there a
it
Mark
all.
Twain quote about this? When I was 18, my father knew nothing, but when I was 21, I was amazed at how much he had learned in just 3 years.
Makes a lot of sense. If people would like to learn more about you, the podcast, see more of your material, what is the best way for them to do that?
If you're looking to build some real wealth and figure out truly what you want your money doing for you, and you want to do it without a bunch of unnecessary risk, go to kickstartwithmark.com, kickstartwithmark.com. Or if you would like to just kind of learn more about this kind of counterintuitive strategies that we mentioned, my podcast is called Not Your Average Financial Podcast.com.
And we will put that all in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Rocky, thank you.
Are you clear on your purpose for your life and money? Are you enjoying the journey, or are you waiting for some time in the future to start living? We only get one chance, and so creating the harmony along the way and being intentional is so profound, and yet most people won't. By the way, profit first works for people as much as it does for business owners. You can pay yourself first and put that money aside to build wealth in a separate account. It's how I did it, by setting up all of these different saving streams and then just increasing them little by little over time. This week's action step: what do I want my money doing for me? Answer that question. And remember to not focus on products, but how your money can serve you. There are numerous ways to live on less and enjoy more. When you make the mindset shift, you will start to see it happen. Think about, where are you paying for monthly services that you don't use? Maybe it's the cable bill or some software subscription you no longer use. Maybe it's an old gym membership you stopped going to. Be intentional with where you direct your money, and it will respond. Next week, we have my friend Kevin Davis on to talk about the 4 pillars of health. We'll go deep into topics that are outside of what you normally hear. If you enjoyed this episode and you know someone who would benefit from it, would you do me a favor and share it with them? They'd appreciate you as well. Thanks for listening. Have an abundant week.